the integration of dude wipes at the beginning of the episode and throughout the episode was so deft. It only we could have done it. All right, it's Thursday, April 7th, 2022. This is episode 210. This is the Token CEO podcast. I'm Erika Nardini. I'm the CEO of Barstool Sports. Here's stuff that's happening around here. So Loud Sean has left. Loud Sean, I think, has been here about 5.5 years. So Loud Sean led our production group. He's gone and taken what he describes to be a dream job opportunity in the MMA space, which I'm always psyched when somebody leaves for a big dream opportunity. I think that's awesome. I think that that's the whole point in life, is to just go take a risk and take a jump and to do something that you didn't think was possible or that you never thought would come your way. I also think it's really, really good for the Barstool team. I think one of the things that I'm kind of thinking about or struggling with is that we had a lot of people, and we've talked about this before in our attrition, which is we had a lot of people in the same type of jobs or in the same management position for a really long time. And I don't think in every case that those people were continually like upping their game and changing how they did things. And, like the criticism of Loud Sean was that he delegated everything. Like the morale underneath him was really, really bad. And one of the things that, after we started to see people leave was like, did this feedback ever make its way into anyone? Did we ever do anything about this? Because I think when you have people who have bad morale or low morale, you got to look to the manager. And instead of looking to the manager and solving more systemic things, we just hired more producers and threw more money at people, which really only served to complicate the issue and make things, in some cases, worse. So, I'm happy for him. I think it's a funny feeling for Barstool where we've had, the OG crew goes way back to Milton, but there was an OG crew, when I started and Dave and I and everybody came to New York. So it is strange. It's kind of the end of an era to see someone from that time leave. I also think that there's so many opportunities where we can be doing things better. And one of the things that I did not do a good job on was just like scratching beneath the surface and really understanding the dynamics of why things happened. Like after people left, I spent like 2 weeks ago, I went into all the performance reviews and I was like, holy shit, like people were doing performance reviews, peer reviews, and I don't know what it's called when you review someone who's your manager, but like whatever that review is called. And they were so telling. And then you go read the review that the manager of the person wrote, and they like didn't include any of that feedback. And it was like, God, that sucks. Like what a missed opportunity for people. Like no wonder people felt that they weren't heard, because they weren't. So anyway, so I think, shout out to Loud Sean, excited for him, also really excited for us and, all the things that are happening. Dave's been making fun of Hank, calling Hank Corporate Hank, which is so funny. I mean, Hank's on Slack. I find it shocking. I had a business meeting with Hank last week, I find it fun. I'm like actually dying to write Hank's mother to be like, I'm so proud of Hank. But I think it's opening up so many opportunities for people like Hank who want to do something great and make things happen, and just have really never had a forum to do that before. So I think those are positive and changing things here. I also wrote down a bunch of notes today. Oh, the other thing I've been thinking about while we're just talking about where we are is, I think one of the things that I'm trying to balance or just to figure out is when you're a manager or you're a CEO or you run a division or you run a sales team or you lead account management or production, these are roles in our world, but it could be in any world. I think one of the things that's really hard is how you manage your stress and the stress that's affecting the group, the business, the division, whatever. And then how do you translate that into the message to the people that work for you or with you? I think that, when I'm at my worst, the stress that I feel gets taken out on groups of people or an initiative or what we're doing. Like it comes across as negative, it comes across as punitive, it's kind of relentless, and it's just like, it feels like shit for everybody involved. And one of the hard things about going through so much change is that what you realize in the process is there are the people like a Hank in this case who are like stepping up, running with the opportunity, taking on more, doing things, approaching it really positively and productively. And then there are people who just want to rationalize the way it's always been done. They don't want to hear feedback. They don't really want to change in the first place. They don't want to evolve to do anything. They don't want to listen to feedback on how to do things differently. And that's frustrating. Like, I'm frustrated by it. And my instinct is always to be like, like to freak out and be punishing almost, or to be so negative in my response. And what I'm realizing is like, I can't take the stress that I feel in my job and make that other people's problem or other people's stress. Like, I've got to find a way to take the stress that I feel and to channel it productively, to encourage, and I think to motivate, and then to create the type of action and traction that's ultimately going to solve the problem that's giving the company or me stress in the first place. So one of the things that I'm trying to do better, and that I think most people here can be better at, is like being an immediate teacher, like giving immediate feedback. I think so often when something happens that you don't like, or something happens that doesn't go well, you tend to like sit back and retrench and stew on it, or bitch about it, or, complain to your, spouse or your peer about it, instead of like taking the moment to be like, that wasn't great. Like, here's why it wasn't great. Here's what we could have done differently, or you could have done differently, and here's what my expectation is the next time this comes around. Like, if you think about like having a little kid in a restaurant and like the kid's like eating with his fingers instead of using utensils, you're not going to just like let it go and 2 weeks later be like, hey dude, you should have really used utensils last week at McDonald's or wherever. I don't even think they have, do they really even have utensils at McDonald's? Probably plastic. Oh yeah, McFlurries, they have the spoon. Yeah. Anyways, long story short, you get the drift. But I think, it was funny, like we had a meeting last week where we have two people who kind of share, their worlds intersect with one another. And like what I'm trying to do for the first time in I think like 3 years we're going to be able to do this, is to have people actually fucking work together and feel like they're on the same team and make things happen. And instead, it's like, no, I don't want to interview your people because that's just a waste of time. And it's like, well, how are we ever going to like partner together if you're not invested in her people and she's not invested in your people? And then what I'm realizing is like, fuck, I should have said something right then. I should have like nipped that. Instead, I got mad. I was like, that's annoying. We shouldn't do it this way. And then I missed an opportunity, like in checking myself on it, like, the immediate feedback to myself is I should have made that a better teaching moment, or a better moment to address something that I think is really symptomatic of people not working together. Like, I was totally embarrassed. I had a conversation with our interim CFO, and he's like, hey, just so you're aware, like, I was going to introduce your people to some vendor or partner who we should be working with. And the people he was going to introduce to the vendor were like, don't do me a favor, don't do it together. Introduce me separately and introduce the other person separately. And I'm like, that's fucked up. That is not how we should be running our business. And to hear that from somebody who's been here like all of 7 minutes and is like, hey, just FYI, I'm like, we just have a lot where the things that actually make a company go are the ways that people intersect with one another, how they rely on one another, how they relate to one another. And, there's just, I think that's just a constant area for improvement. So that's my business rant. Other big news, we had an awesome video with Caleb and Hasbulla, which we talked about. I think we talked about that last week. It was awesome. I laughed so hard. I thought it was so well done. Huge shout out to Tom Mullins, who's one of our best editors. He crushed that. Pulled an all-nighter, worked nonstop, was a perfectionist in making it. Caleb is one of our biggest perfectionists. What I love about Caleb, did we talk about the volume shooters?
Yeah.
Okay, we already talked about that. So Caleb's one of our biggest perfectionists, probably only surpassed by Tom, who then got on pulled an all-nighter, got the video done. It was out for Sunday conversation. Also, shout out to the production team and the ads team. I watched the video on Sunday on YouTube. The integration of dude wipes at the beginning of the episode and throughout the episode was so deft. It only we could have done it. Like, I loved it. We should show a clip of that here. Like, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Huh? What?
Yeah.
It just was so organic. Like, that's brand integration. It's like, you know, he's taking the dude wipe from his, you know, from the seat and wiping his hands as he's eating the sundae. Like, it was so perfect. Get to the commercial break. The commercial is a Caleb feature. It's a Caleb commercial for Hooters, where Caleb's fronting the entire ad. Like, it just was so well done. And I was so proud because I'm like, only Barstool Sports could have done this interview. Only Caleb could have created the mastermind of the conversation with Hasbulla. Only Barstool could do the integration and then a commercial that were just created by us, scripted by us, produced by us, run by us. And I'm like, we should be showcasing this to more and more people. So I'm really excited about the work that we're doing there. I thought the way that Dan and the PMT crew promoted Raising Cane's this weekend in New Orleans was awesome. Dan at the takeout register, like, it just was an amazing integration with Raising Cane's. I think the set work that we're doing around all of our shows, the upgrade on that is awesome. Still feels Barstool, but looks better than it ever has. And then finally, like, we're adding new people. So we have a new chief people officer for the first time. You know, one, we have an HR person who doesn't hate us, which is, you know, feels like a small miracle. And then two, someone who actually wants to make a difference. And is a fire alarm going off?
Yes, it's a test. Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, let's just keep going. If we burn down, it will be for a good cause. And then we have a new head of communications, which is awesome. So for the first time, we have someone who's solely and only dedicated to how we tell our story, who we tell our story to, actually having relationships with reporters instead of being like, fuck you, why do you want to write about us? So I think all those things are really positive and show progress, and I'm excited about them. Also, shout out to South Carolina. So they won, the South Carolina women won the women's NCAA Final Four, beating UConn, womp womp, sorry Gio. But great games. That also was a great tournament. Our bracket didn't make it all the way, but we were very close. Interestingly enough, I was texting with my college coach this weekend. One thing I really like about my college coach is that she sued the college that I went to. And then it just shows up every so often very randomly in my text messages with something extremely ranty about Title IX, which, to be honest, is a very good thing to be ranty about. So one thing that was cool in the Final Four last night is that the Kansas team had Title IX language on the back of I'm Possible, so all of their shirts, which is pretty amazing. What was interesting about what Heidi and I were texting about is that still to this day, when you look at the state of Maine, I went to Colby, obviously, so still today, when you look at the state of Maine, there is a massive pay discrepancy between women's coaches and men's coaches. And then there were a lot of articles published around just the inequities in coaching in D3. So essentially, in D3, at least when I played sports in college, the field hockey coach was also the lacrosse coach. So women's teams shared coaches, where if you were a coach of a women's team, you generally had to coach one or one and a half other teams in addition to your main sport. Whereas the men's coaches typically only ever coached one team, one sport. And I never had really thought about it. I noticed it when I was in college. Like, Heidi was caught between coaching lacrosse and then coaching field hockey, and she really couldn't dedicate her full attention to either. It was obvious she preferred lacrosse more. But when she should have been recruiting for lacrosse, preparing for lacrosse, overseeing training for lacrosse, she was out, running us around New England playing field hockey. So it was just kind of interesting to, that was over 20 years ago, way more than that I was in college. But still to this day that happens. And then what I was thinking about is that, on one level I can understand at universities where there's a lot of money at stake or there's a lot of broadcast fees, like I can almost understand the discrepancy between men and women's sports because the men's sports bring in so much money to the school. Like that's probably fucked up, but in some way I can understand that. When you look at D3 athletics, you look at Colby College athletics, nobody gives a fuck about the football team or the field hockey team. So the rationale for why there's any discrepancy is just completely bogus. It's also, I think the hypocrisy of liberal arts schools and just the hypocrisy of the university system in general is just sometimes hard to take. I mean, there's obviously a lot made of the NCAA. I think we experienced it firsthand when we went to the Arizona Bowl or when we endeavored to do the Arizona Bowl, which is we spent the entire year apologizing, rationalizing, explaining who we were, what Barstool Sports was, why Dave Portnoy wasn't the devil, how we were going to do this. And then we got completely screwed because the school made a financial decision to go play and make a lot of money, whereas we lost so much money in trying to put together the game, the broadcast, the festival around the game, et cetera. So I don't know, it's hard. It's interesting to me, like when I think about the values of a liberal arts college today. Like I loved going to a liberal arts school. I loved college, but the values and the just commitment to being so socially progressive is so palatable. And then you're fucking screwing your female coaches. So it's like really, like you can't, if you're going to stand for something, then do something. And if you're like, hey, we're in the business of making money, men's athletics makes us more money, it gets us more enrollment. I don't know, they bring bigger donors. I don't know. But it's just, I think that's one of the challenges of education today is that like, in a lot of ways, it really is about money. And in other ways, the educational system and big universities and certainly NESCAC schools or D3 colleges are espousing to be something else. So I don't know. That's a bigger topic for a different day. But that's my Title IX thoughts this morning. So that's a lot. So just quick shout out to Celsius. So if you're watching this, this is sparkling orange. Sparkling orange is my new favorite Celsius flavor. What's great about Celsius is that it's an energy drink. So if you are trying to make a lot of change or get shit done or work like a girl and make things happen, Celsius is a brand that you should try. I love it. They've got a ton of different flavors. They've got watermelon, they've got guava. I like the orange. They also have several different varieties where you can get some with caffeine in it. I think that's called Celsius Heat. They've got Celsius BCAA plus energy, so that helps you after a workout. Everybody knows I'm not working out. And then they have Celsius on the go, so if you hate water like me, you can just dip it into your water. It's a little packet. Gives you the energy kick that you need. So go to Celsius.com to find a store near you, or you can get it at Target, Amazon, or Walmart. Go to Celsius, live fit. Okay, so that was Celsius. Quick shout out to Cindy Eckert. Cindy Eckert sent me this, Women on Top. She sent me a cashmere sweater. How awesome is Cindy Eckert? Yeah. So anyways, Cindy Eckert, let's just have a second commercial break for Addie. So we talked about Addie when we interviewed Cindy, which is a great interview. So if you haven't listened or watched to that interview, I thought it was one of our best. She's incredible, awesome entrepreneur. She's a woman in the pharmaceutical space, which is exceedingly rare. 3% of all decisions about women's bodies are made by women. So Cindy is one of those people helping to change that ratio. But she's created a product called Addie. And what Addie is, for lack of a better phrase, is female Viagra. So what's great about female Viagra is there's a whole host of reasons why women and men want to have sex. I think what's challenging for women, especially the older you get, the more responsibilities you have, is that you can start to feel like your lack of desire to have sex has something to do with your emotional state, your body, your sense of self, your sense of self-worth, your esteem, when in reality, there may just be a chemical imbalance in your brain. Cindy described it on our episode as essentially it's like having all the folders or all the browser windows open on your computer. And instead of focusing focusing on having sex, which is a primal, natural thing for people to want to do, you're focused on all the different folders. You're thinking about the grocery list, you're thinking about a conversation you had at work that day, you're thinking about what you need to do tonight or tomorrow or the day after, you're thinking about something that's going on with your kids or your friends or your network, whatever that may be, instead of just thinking about having sex. So what Addie does is it makes all those tabs go away, and it helps women have a better experience in the bedroom. So I don't even know where you go for Addie, but I'm giving the free ad read in return for the cashmere sweater. And also because I think it's something that can help women, and there's no harm and there's no shame in trying it. Go to your doctor. If you're feeling this way and you would like to enjoy a better sex life, one is stop feeling like shit about yourself and blaming your emotional state for the reason that you don't want to have sex. And two, talk to your doctor about Addie. Let's talk about the Sirius XM app. So of my music consumption, I consume music more than I consume, at least audio, more than anything else. For me, it's split between Spotify and Sirius XM. The Sirius XM app is awesome. If you are going out for a run or you need a little pick-me-up or you want some psych music, I tend to go between the 80s channel and then the TikTok channel, pretty amazing. They also have the Pandora channel, so I go into the pop presets and there is so many opportunities, so many options. I feel like it's always like an Olivia Rodrigo song, which I tend to be like, I don't really know. Or like, Rachel's Harry Styles. I don't know any of his music either. Then I back right out of there and I go back to my comfort zone, which is the Dave Matthews channel. They ran the New Orleans 1998 concert all weekend this weekend. It was amazing. It's awesome. It's easy to use. You can get all of their talk channels. You can get their news channels. You can get their music channels. You can listen to the Wiggle Dickers on TikTok. Go to SiriusXM.com/token CEO offer to sign up and get 3 months free. Again, my channel ranking, Dave Matthews Band. Also listen to the YouTube channel this weekend, which was very good. Spectrum, I love that. 80s, 90s, TikTok. So subscribe now and get your first 3 months for free. Visit SiriusXM.com/token CEO offer to sign up. Offer details apply. So Marc Murphy's joining us. We talked about the Ukraine a couple weeks back. And obviously what's happening in the Ukraine it's complicated. Like there's so much happening. It's horrific. I mean, I went on Apple News yesterday, and legitimately every story in Apple News was about the war crimes and the humanitarian crisis in the Ukraine. Marc Murphy, who's a chef from the New York area, listened to our episode. He DM'd us and told us that he's been over in Poland for 3 weeks cooking food. I think they cook up to 100,000 meals a day for Ukrainian refugees coming into Poland. So we're going to talk to him about how he got there, what's going on the ground, what his observations are. Most of the people going to the food kitchen are women and children, so that's kind of interesting. And to get his perspective on the humanitarian crisis, as well as what an average person, or in this case, a very talented professional person, can do. Let's just jump into it, Marc. Describe, first of all, tell people who you are, because you're great. And then what's happening, how'd you get to Poland? What's happening? Give us the perspective.
The perspective starts like this. Well, first, I'm Marc Murphy. I'm a chef. I'm one of the judges on Food Network Chopped. I used to have a bunch of restaurants in Manhattan. They're all closed right now. I still have an event space where I do events down in Tribeca. But it was after the Food and Wine Festival in Miami. I was there, and we were there. All the chefs were there. It's sort of like our Super Bowl, and Jose Andres, who started World Central Kitchen. We had a meeting with him. I mean, everybody was there. Tyler Florence, Guy Fieri. We were all in a room together, and he was just talking about the organization and how things were going, and because he likes to keep us updated. And then basically the war broke out, and I had another gig. I went to Tallahassee to do another gig for another charity. On my way home, I was reading the news, looking at it, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to cancel everything. I texted Jose, and I got on a plane and came over here. I said, I'll do whatever you need me to do to help. So I got here about a month ago, and got off the plane, and here I am.
And started making paella. How'd you guys choose? So describe what, I want to hear about the paella, but describe what World Central Kitchen is doing in Poland.
Well, World Central Kitchen it's an organization that helps feed people. I mean, basically, it's a human right to be able to eat. And Jose started this organization and usually does a lot of disaster relief, hurricanes, earthquakes, and goes and helps out and feeds people in need. I think this is probably the first time they've done it where there's a war involved. So what it is just they have they get donations. They have this organization. They buy food. But it's interesting thing about their organization is they don't just they take donations and they feed people, but what they do is they try to go into communities. The idea is that anybody who's feeding people during times of need is part of World Central Kitchen. We sort of consider it, right? So we're in Poland. I'm like 7 minutes away not very far from the border. There's kitchens here, right? So you can be a partner. Like, so in times of crisis, they help, they give money, they get takeout containers, they give them like Cambros to be able to put food in. And they sort of partner with all these different restaurants to try to get they help pay their staff, they help buy the food. So they're basically keeping the ecosystem going of that area where those restaurants to keep them employed. Restaurant workers are needed if you want to feed people. I mean, there's no way around it, right? And instead of bringing in other things or other people, they're already here. They need jobs. They need to feed people. They need to feed their families too. So it's interesting the way they do that. And here, what happened here, we're in Przemysl. I don't know how to pronounce any of the names over here. It's very difficult. But they set up a kitchen where we're just producing a lot of food, and we have a lot of partners that are taking care of distribution sites. A bunch of the border crossing, some of the refugee centers where people are actually staying. Some are staying for a certain period of time, and then they're getting on buses and going other places. The train stations that are near us, we have stands there basically, and we're feeding people that are getting off trains. Sometimes the kids, a cup of hot chocolate, some warm soup, a little goulash as we're making. Anything a stew is basically a goulash over here. And, it's still cold here. It snowed like 3 inches the other day. So it's, and it's the women and children are coming over the border with like a suitcase. I mean, it's the saddest thing you've ever seen. There's no, and they're just coming over the border. Their country's just wrecked.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing. I was excited because of the organization. I just couldn't sit on my ass. I was watching the news. I was like, I got to go do something. And I have a skill. I mean, I'm a chef. I can cook. I'm also pretty good at organizing and leading a team. I used to have, 5 restaurants in the city. I used to have about 650 employees. So I know how to organize stuff. And I decided, so I popped in and I'm here helping out. There's a chef who runs the kitchen, and I'm helping her out a lot. And, I'm probably going to be here, I think, till the 23rd. And then who knows, maybe I'll have to come back if they need help more.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I think it's incredible. When we launched the Barstool Fund, actually, Marcus Lemonsis, most of his donations around COVID were going to World Central Kitchen. And I love the concept that you're plugging into the economy that exists today, or the ecosystem that exists today, which is, his real philosophy was, hey, if you can solve for food insecurity, and food insecurity in the world is one of the biggest issues in the world, and you can support the local economy and you can support local businesses in helping to solve the problem, you're really solving 2 to 3 problems at once. And what's so amazing is that you're in the middle of probably the biggest humanitarian crisis of our time. And that the organization and what you're doing, you're helping restaurants, you're helping business owners, you're helping wage earners, and then most important, you're helping refugees who are, just been decimated. The war crimes, what you're seeing happening in the Ukraine is just gutting. And you're helping to give people the meal that they need that's at least going to get them through the next few hours or the next day.
Right. It's amazing. They've hired Ukrainian refugees in the actual kitchen, because we have like there's a distribution department that has to coordinate with how much food needs to go where. And a lot of these Ukrainians speak Ukrainian, they speak Polish, and some of them speak English. So we've actually been hiring some of them, and it's tremendous to be able to sit there and watch somebody whose husband and family is back fighting a war, and they're here on this side of the border working with us.
Yeah, it's so awesome. I was reading an article yesterday. First of all, I think the Ukrainian people are so inspiring. Like it's the resilience and the ingenuity of Ukrainian people is just so staggering. I was reading an article yesterday where one thing happening right now in the Ukraine is that people are collecting scrap metal. They're melting it down. they're using it to, or shaping it into armor. Women are then sewing fabric around the metal so that becomes essentially the uniform that, average women, average men are using to go fight the Russians. The ingenuity is so amazing, and the heart. And I think what's so incredible about what you're doing is, like, when I see, at least in the US, like when I see people have Ukrainian stickers on their window, or they've got the flag on their lawn, and I'm like, but what are we really doing to help? And that's one question I have for you, which is, how can people help?
Well, it is interesting because, we have a lot of volunteers that are coming over here, and they have to pay their own way. They find a place to stay, get an Airbnb or a hotel or something. And there's a lot of people that have come over and helped. And it's great that people can take time out of their lives to do that. And at a certain point in the beginning, we had way too many, it was like, slow down. So World Central Kitchen is actually, they have a sign up sheet. You go to their website, and so people can help by signing up. And I'm sure that in the months, because this is going to go on for a while. So, it's all, everybody wants to do it now, but in 2 months from now, we're going to probably need people here then too. And the other thing is to donate. I mean, we're buying food, we're buying tractor trailers full of food. And interestingly enough, they also come to our kitchen, they unload, like you get a truck full of rice, it gets unloaded, and a truck full of other stuff. And then they repack trucks with a little bit of everything. And they're going in, and there's truck drivers going into Ukraine, delivering food to different cities.
Wow.
So there's a lot of, money is obviously needed, World Central Kitchen, and it's pretty wild. And an interesting story, I did, when I got here, I did, I do the social media thing, and I did a little video about why I came, and here I was. And I had somebody help me, because I'm not that swift at it, but to do a donation page. And I literally, I put it up, and I went to work for like 12 hours. I came back. I couldn't believe it. The amount of people just on my social media, to date, I think I've raised over $50,000, but it was more about the thousands of comments that I got about support from friends, from, even the friends on Instagram, people that, all these people, outpouring of love and support for the cause, for the work that we're doing. And it was to me, it was sort of interesting to see in this day and age, to be able to get the word out that quickly. I didn't even expect anything, because I was just doing this because I want to help. It has nothing to do with me or what I do on television and all this other stuff. I just wanted to do this because I wanted to help. And then it became a lot bigger than me. Then all of a sudden I got, Anderson Cooper's, producers were calling for me to do an interview with him, and this and that. And then I started thinking, okay, I have to do things like this, like even talking to you, to get the word out about what's happening here. Because it's not just the physical work of making, hundreds and thousands of meals a day, but it's also about doing what I'm doing now. And I think it's very rewarding for me to be able to be.
Yeah, that's incredible. So why paella? Like, how, that is not what I would have guessed.
It's actually, so the shape of the pans are like a paella pan, but they're much deeper.
Okay.
So we're actually not, sometimes we'll make a paella and we put it in a Cambros and it goes out, but a lot of the times it's more like soups and hearty stews and things like that, especially when we're serving at the border, because they might have a child, a suitcase, and they can't really eat. It's better if it's in a cup and they can drink it.
Slug it back.
Like a great noodle soup, or we're using a lot of beets and horseradish, go in the borscht direction. We actually try to find ingredients, the things that they understand and like, so, because you want to be able to be accommodated. You want something that they understand. And
yeah, totally. Nourishing. Yeah, that's comforting. It's also really interesting about this crisis in particular, which I don't think you're hearing a whole lot about now, which is, one is just how much of the world's food supply comes from Russia. Like my understanding is like the predominant grain supply in the world, especially in Africa, is coming from Russia. So what's happening between Ukraine and Russia, and as it relates to world hunger, is going to have a dramatic impact around the rest of the world. Like, are you seeing that? Are you hearing about that as well?
I do hear about that. I have a friend of mine who works at the FAO, Food Agriculture Organization. It's the food part of the UN. And she's been telling me that this is right now is the planting season. And if they don't get that second crop in the ground, over 30% of maize, grain, and I think sunflower oil come from these countries, from Russia and Ukraine. So she said basically we're going to have to take from the poor to give to the poorest. I mean, it's really going to be bad. Most countries in Africa do not have stockpile of grain or anything like that. No, this is it's huge. This is a huge problem.
Yeah, it's just insane. It's also just so interesting how it's all interrelated at this point. Like there's nothing that's truly local. Like the idea of local is kind of gone.
Yeah, it's sort of crazy, and the whole thing's a little nutty.
What's the mood like? What's the feeling on the ground where you are? Like what's the mood?
I don't know. There's some people, like one of the dishwashers, this woman, I don't speak Polish, so it's really hard to sort of get a grasp, but it turns out I said something in Italian and I speak Italian, and she goes, "Oh, you speak Italian?" And we started speaking. She lived in Sicily for 7 years, so I can communicate with her. And I was asking her, I said, "How do your people feel here on the ground? Like, are they worried it's going to spill over here?" And they're like, "No, we're if they come here, then the whole world will go after them and this and that." But they did, and bombs dropped like an hour and a half from here. I mean, and those things could miss, I guess. I don't know how it works, but it is a little troubling. But this country and a lot of countries, a lot of these people still remember being under the thumb of communist Russia. I mean, it's not actually that long ago if you think about it. Some of the older people here are like, "Oh, this is coming back again," kind of thing. So, but it's I'm not interacting enough, I think, with the locals to be able to really get a feeling. But life seems to be going on normal here. The one thing I do know when I've been to the refugee centers, the government, the Polish government, is doing an amazing job of trying to keep order, to try to protect the people, because it's women and children, right? So I was in a refugee center, and you're leaving, the cops stop you and they look at your car and they want to see your papers because there's child trafficking going on, there's women being taken advantage of, and so they're worried about that. So they're really trying to protect the refugee centers and protect all these people. Like at the train station, there's a room where there's cots, right, where people can go nap and sleep while they're waiting for something, or a train or a ride or something. And there's certain rooms, there's guards at the door. Only women and children are allowed in those rooms. So it's amazing to see humanity helping humanity. That's one of the most beautiful things here, is everybody's helping out. And you see a lot, and I've only been out to dinner twice because I just come home and cook in my Airbnb.
You're working. Yeah.
I'm working. I'm here for a purpose. I've been out twice, and it's there's a lot of foreigners here helping. When I'm at the border, I've also seen a troop of like French ambulance people that are there helping, and they're doing 10-day shifts and going. So it's really great to see the world helping each other out.
That's awesome. Marc, thanks for sharing this with us. Where can people follow you? Just give a shout out to how people can follow your journey.
I'm at Chef Marc Murphy. Marc with a C.
Marc with a C. Chef Marc with a C Murphy.
My mother's French. She named me.
That's all right.
Marc with a C.
There's worse things.
Chef Marc. Yeah, I get the French, the Marc, and then the Murphy. Well, that's,
you're just a global mutt. All right, Marc, thanks for doing this. Best of luck, and then come see us when you get back.
Absolutely. Take care. Nice to see you.
All right, Grove Collaborative. I am loving Grove Collaborative. Loving. Paper towels. Who doesn't need paper towels? I love paper towels. You can get dog treats. You can get Mrs. Meyer's soap. I am obsessed with the honeysuckle. I have the honeysuckle spray. You can get paper towels. You can get pretty much anything and everything you need for your home. If you are reading about Amazon right now, you are reading about unionization, you're reading about the cruel mistreatment of their employees. You're like, in my mind, I'm kind of like, is Amazon so great for us? I don't know. I don't know. I'm unresolved on Amazon. But what's great about Grove Collaborative is you can shop direct with a small and growing company. They have their own products, which are called Grove & Co., which I love. And then you can get good natural staples for your house. So this is Shameless Pets. Who does not want a lobster rollover soft baked dog treat? Like Rachel, let's go. If you go to grove.com/token today, you can get a free gift set worth up to $50. Who doesn't want that? I want that. Do you know how many Mrs. Meyer's soap you could get for $50? What's like 8? What's 50 divided by 8?
You get like 4.
You can get 4. 4.5.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Shipping is fast and it's free. So get started right now at grove.com/token. That's grove.com/token. So we're on to Q&A. First Q&A. How do you know when you've outgrown a job and it's time to look for another? I think by asking that question, you have outgrown your job. So how do you know when you've outgrown your job? 1, you're bored. 2, you're bored. 3, you're bored. So if you're bored, you've probably outgrown your job, or your job's too easy for you. Both are shitty situations. Get yourself out of that. The other way I think you know you've outgrown a job is that you don't feel like good stress about anything. You're not like excited or motivated to go chomp at something bigger or do something new. Another way I think you've outgrown your job is, for me anyways, when I felt like I've outgrown a job, I tend to get really frustrated where it's like a constant eye roll of like, ugh. Like you feel like you already know everything, which, let's be honest, you don't, but you can feel that way because you're not being stimulated or challenged or exposed to things that push you to someplace new. So I mostly think that if you're bored in your job, you don't feel a stress. If you ask yourself honestly, what do I not know how to do today? What am I doing today that's new and I'm doing for the first time? If the answer is nothing, you've probably outgrown your job. The other thing, which is fairly obvious, is how long have you been in your job? Like, I don't think there's any formula for how much time you need to be in a job before you outgrow it. But if you've been in the same job for, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years. I mean, I interviewed a guy last week who's been in the same job or worked for the same company for 18 years. And I was like, I don't think you'd be a great fit here. But I think that's kind of then you're just comfortable, right? So I think the great news is if you're talking about outgrowing a job, it means that you're interested in growing into a new job, which is how you should start to look at things and really where I would focus the energy. I think sometimes when people outgrow a job, they then get negative and kind of destructive about that job itself versus putting their energy to finding whatever the new not outgrown job is next. So that's my take on outgrowing your job. Second question, in nearly every professional review I've ever had, the same theme appears in the could use improvement category. I tend to become defensive. Hold on, Dave Portnoy. Don't know the answer. Okay. In nearly every professional review I've ever had, the same theme appears in the could use improvement category. I tend to become defensive when I or my work is criticized. And although one of my consistent strengths is being very self-aware with high EQ, this continues to be something I struggle with. Any advice for someone that takes everything to heart and reacts emotionally when given feedback or any sort of criticism? Oh my God, I feel you. Everyone is emotional. Everyone takes things too much to heart, or most people anyways. So one, I have a lot of empathy with that. I can feel the same way. I can get defensive. Sometimes I feel like when you're criticized in your job, your first reaction is to be defensive, either because you're insecure about something or you feel vulnerable or you feel attacked, or the way that feedback comes across just makes you kind of crouch. That said, nobody is perfect. Everyone is flawed. No one is a master of something all the time, all the way through. And feedback is a gift, right? So the more you are criticized or given feedback in your job, it means a couple things. One is that people care enough to give you the feedback. Like at Barstool Sports, if I'm ignoring you, that's a bad sign. If I'm giving you a fuck ton of feedback, I'd be a little concerned, but I would also feel like I'm engaged. I think to not be engaged with is the single worst thing at work. It means your manager or your boss's boss or whomever, or your peers, they don't respect you, they don't care to have you involved, they're not engaged with you. So engagement is really important. So let's start there, which is people are giving you feedback. So you're doing something that people care about. The second thing is when people give you feedback, one technique I try anyways, and I don't know if this is a great way to do it, is I try to take a deep breath and like count to 6 or count to 5 or count to some number that just makes that first fuck you reaction go away. Because everybody, look, people are defensive, people are vulnerable. It's human nature to fight back when someone says that you're not doing the right thing. So the first thing I try to do is just to take a deep breath and to be very calm. The second thing is sometimes a really good thing to do is to repeat back what you just heard, not in a high-pitched, emotional, escalating type of way, but to say back to someone, okay, I understand that what you're concerned about is ABC, or what I'm hearing you say is that you really dislike the way I blank, blank, blank. Get the facts, right? So take a deep breath, get the facts of what someone is telling you, thank them for the feedback, and then say, I'd love the opportunity to digest this and think about it and come back to you with some ways that I could do a better job or make this work, or not even say do a better job. I'd love to come back to you with some thoughts after I've had a chance to digest. What this will do is it shows a mature reaction. It really makes sure that you both understand, the person giving you the feedback and you yourself understand exactly the same thing about what's being said. It makes the person you're giving feedback to feel heard, which is important. And then lastly, it buys you time to go have your negative freak out, screw you reaction, and then to come back with a decent way to make the situation work. And you may come back and say, hey, you gave me 5 points of feedback. I completely understand where 1 through 3 are coming from, and here are ideas for how I can do a better job, or we can do a better job of that. I disagree with point number 4, and on point number 5, I'd like to educate you as to why this happens and to get your perspective on how I could do a better job or we could do a better job fixing it. So it turns the conversation from a defensive, reactive, emotional conversation to a proactive conversation where you're investing in finding a solution, making things better, while also advocating for yourself and giving insight into why things happen to be a certain way. All right, last question is, what's the number one thing you look for when interviewing someone? Eye contact. So that's my biggest thing. If someone doesn't make eye contact, this thing is not going anywhere. So I like eye contact. I like someone who can articulate what they've done succinctly. Like, I don't need a rambling overview of your career. I don't think anybody wants that. Nobody has the time and attention. And it also gives me a sense of how that person would describe us and working here. Like, you want something succinct. I did this, this, and this. Here's what it accomplished. My career has really been at the intersection of blank, blank, and blank. I've delivered these 5 things. I've really learned I'm passionate about this. And then the next thing is to come to the table with ideas about the job you're interviewing for. I find so much of the time people do not come prepared. Oh my God. So I had this informational discussion. I got introduced to 2 people by someone very, very, very high powered who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. We go into the conversation and they're asking me all sorts of questions about digital influencers and media personalities and the business you could create around them. And what I realized is they had no idea who I was. They had no idea what Barstool Sports does. And they were ignorant about the subject matter that we were talking about. And it made me feel insulted because it made me feel like I was wasting my time. Like, why am I giving an hour of my day to something that doesn't have anything to do with Barstool Sports to be like, waste my time? So don't make the person interviewing you feel like you wasted their time. And vice versa, right? If you're interviewing and the person you're interviewing with has no interest in where you've worked, what you've done, how you did it, what your ideas are, that's insulting to you. Don't go work at that place. All right, we're not doing circling back today because I ran out of time and I have a conference call with the finance people at Penn, which I am jonesed up for. I've been gunning for this conversation for a while. If you have not already, subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to Things You've Missed. Go to our job board. It's worklikeagirl.com. You can join our Facebook discussion group. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, blah, 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 blah. You can follow Token CEO everywhere that you can follow people. And we'll see you back here next week.